And I was having a coffee at this cafe, and I was sitting at the table, and this cockroach just crawled up from around the underside of the table. And it was the size, it was the size of a small mouse. It was gigantic. And it was hissing, which, cockroaches do hiss, but you don't see it very often. And I was just like, and I'm not sure what I was going to do. I think I was going to scream and leap for the light fittings, but the waitress walked by, saw it, and slammed it with her hand and then placed it inside her apron. And I have to tell you, I was in love.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to The Pleasure of the Text, a shared imaginative space where readers and writers make meaning together. We're your hosts, Shannon and Gareth.
Good morning, Shannon. That was a very smooth introduction. Well done.
Thank you. I wish you didn't point it out so everyone's like, wow, she does that every time. She's so good. Yeah, we don't delete all those bloops that I do.
The bloops.
The bleeps, the bloops. There are many.
Yeah. Well, they come from both sides, so that's all right.
And how are you on this fine, rainy day on my end?
Yeah, it's actually very sunny where I am. Clear skies. Might go for a ride later. That'd be exciting.
A ride. So I'm not sure if our audience are aware, but you've recently bought a motorbike.
Yes, it's all part of my impending midlife crisis. Actually, I had a motorbike years and years ago, and because at the time I was trying to get by as a writer, I had to sell it to eat. Because you can't eat a motorbike, I tell you. There's not much that's edible on a bike. And then, obviously it's taken a little while to get another one, but it's very exciting. It's a big triumph. And I mean that in the technical sense. It's the Triumph motorbike, but it's also a triumph. I feel triumphant, very happy to have it.
That reminds me of the story, you will be successful, because didn't Rocky Sloan sell his dog, his beloved pet, so he could raise more money to make a movie and to eat? And then he got famous, and then the person he sold the dog to wouldn't give it back to him. I think he
pawned his dog.
Yeah, but you pawned your motorbike for your career, for your aspirations.
My goodness, that's very strange.
He got the dog back.
Did he?
Yeah.
Well, I guess he would have had a bit of financial leverage by that point. What a strange thing, pawning a dog.
I couldn't do it.
I wonder, maybe, our listeners, if there's a comment section on whatever platform you're using, I'd be interested to know, what have you pawned that's very strange, and why?
Oh, that's going to be a great section to read. I'll be interested to hear as well. And I know it's been a while since we podcast. Did we have reasons? Do we have excuses that we want to lay out?
Well, definitely part of it's been technical issues. And
100%.
I must say, I'm just looking at my uploading and I'm sitting on 50%. So that doesn't bode all that well for this time either, but hopefully we'll be able to get through it. I don't know. I think it's just been, I've been very busy working on my course. And I think you've been busy with work and jobs and living on a boat. And I think it's a mixture of these things. I have to say, though, so we're reviewing Cruddy by Lynda Barry. It's an excellent book. I know it's an excellent book, but because people who've listened to this podcast before will know I have a woeful memory, and I was not joking about it. I don't remember very much about Cruddy, so I think this is going to be an unusual review of a book. I have good memories, a bit like when you meet someone once and 20 years go by and you think, I think I liked them. I think I did. Can't remember what they look like. That's kind of where I'm coming from into this review. But you, Shannon, have a memory like a steel trap, so I assume that you'll be able to compensate for my lapses between the two of us.
I will be able to, and I've probably read it 3 times, I want to say, because once I was looking for quotes for this podcast, and then the third time I was looking for a particular scene that you wanted to bring up, and I couldn't find it. So is my memory that good? Because we both remember it being there. But I did want to point out we are reviewing this book today thanks to our good friend and listener, Jay, as part of our book recommendation podcast that we did. And at the beginning, because you're going to read the synopsis, Gareth, but I mentioned it was kind of a graphic book, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to get into this. I loved it. I'm going to just give my review from the start so people have a bit of context. It was 5 stars to me, and I could say that freshly again because I just read it this morning trying to find that scene again. Anyway.
Yeah, it was a very visceral book. Another word that sticks in my mind is pungent. I think... Chekhov said that, when you describe things, you must remember that you have more than one sense. It's not all visual. There are sounds and smells and touches and so forth. And certainly I recall Cruddy being a very sensory kind of read. I think when I read it, I actually hadn't been feeling very well, and I found some of the scenes unsettling on a sort of a neurological sort of level. I found my nervous system was shuddering reading Cruddy, which that's got to be an endorsement, right? Like, I mean, the worst thing a book can be is unmemorable. Now, obviously, all books for me are forgettable, but being unmemorable is a bad thing. And I think Cruddy was a very memorable read, even though I've forgotten a lot of the detail about it.
Well, here's a visceral scene I'll share with you that I just read this morning. Our main character, Roberta, she plays a trick on her dad, and there's eyeballs falling out everywhere, and there's a lady who's got a rag that she's wiping tables with. The eyeball rolls onto the ground, she drops the rag on top of it, and she steps on it, and it goes squish. And then she picks it up and wipes table.
Yeah, that is horrifying, isn't it? It actually, when I was a young man, I used to stay out quite late often, and I was at a cafe in the city in Sydney, and it was a late night cafe. And so I think it was about 3 a.m. And late night cafes are few and far between, and they're not distinguished by being lovely. So this was
having
a real
good coffee.
Yeah, no, none of that. They have coffee, which is great at 3 a.m. when you're in the city. And I was having a coffee at this cafe, and I was sitting at the table, and this cockroach just crawled up from around the underside of the table. And it was the size of a small mouse. It was gigantic. And it was hissing, which, cockroaches do hiss, but you don't see it very often. And I was just like, and I'm not sure what I was going to do. I think I was going to scream and leap for the light fittings, but the waitress walked by, saw it, and slammed it with her hand and then placed it inside her apron. And I have to tell you, I was in love. Like, oh my God, who is this woman?
Welcome to Australia, folks.
Welcome to Australia. Yeah. It was a formative memory. Never forgotten it.
Did you go back?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, I used to. I mean, there were not many cafes that are open that late. So, yeah, I went back.
Okay, well, back to what we're doing today, reviewing this Cruddy book. Yeah. Synopsis, please, Gareth.
Okay. All right, here we go. On a September night in 1971, a few days after getting busted for dropping acid, a 16-year-old curls up in the corner of her ratty bedroom and begins to write. Now the truth can finally be revealed about the mysterious day long ago when the authorities found a child calmly walking in the boiling desert covered with blood. The girl is Roberta Robson, and her rant against a world bounded by the cruddy top bedroom of a cruddy rental house on a very cruddy mud road soon becomes a detailed account of another story, one that she's kept silent since she was 11. Darkly funny and resonant with humanity, Cruddy masterfully intertwines Roberta's stories, part Easy Rider and part bipolar Wizard of Oz. These stories, the backbone of Roberta's short life, include a one-way trip across America fueled by revenge and greed, and a vivid cast of characters, starring Roberta's dangerous father, the owners of the Knocking Hammer, Bar cum Slaughterhouse, and runaway adolescents. With a teenager's eye for freakish detail and a nervous ability to make the most horrible scenes seem hilarious, Cruddy is a stunning achievement. What do you think? Does that? I mean, I'm going to say off the bat that's not a great synopsis. I mean, that is hard to read, man. This is a tip for writers out there: read your stuff out loud, and if you are stumbling all over the place, make some changes. I don't think the synopsis does this justice. I think the writing in Cruddy is really impressive and idiosyncratic, and in a sense, verse-like at times. It has a. I do like the bipolar Wizard of Oz. I think that's a great description.
I agree with you. I think that was my hesitation when UJ first recommended this book. I went online excited, read the synopsis, and I was like, okay then. But I trust you. You're into some great stuff like us, so I'll give it a shot, and blown away. Really loved this book.
Yeah. Lynda Barry's an interesting lady. She's not, I wouldn't have said she was a writer primarily. I think it would be fair to say her first love is art. You have a bit of a biography on her, don't you?
Yes, it's very short. Lynda Barry is an American cartoonist, writer, and teacher. She is best known for her semi-autobiographical comic strip, Ernie Puke's Comic, which ran in alternative newspapers for over 30 years. Barry's work often explores themes of adolescence, family relationships, and the challenges of everyday life. Her drawing style is distinctive, very much so, with its raw, expressive lines and use of handwritten text. In addition to her comics, Barry has also written several books, including the graphic novels Cruddy and 100 Demons. She is also a respected teacher, conducting workshops and classes on writing and drawing. And when I was getting this stuff together, have a look at Lynda Barry on YouTube. She is a teacher. She has her own YouTube channel as well, and she's teaching people how to draw cartoons and comics. And it's very, very down to earth, and it's none of that stuff that you see on if you're scrolling late at night on YouTube and it's this drawing course and you'll be able to do this. Hers is very raw and straight lines and fantastic stuff. And she's great on camera.
Yeah, I've read a few of her interviews, and she definitely has a distinctive voice. And I believe she was associated with The Simpsons. I think she drew on The Simpsons, at least early on. I believe Matt Groening, I think that's how you pronounce his surname, Groening, and she are quite good friends. Cruddy is not, I would say, a graphic novel. I think that's the wrong description for it. So for people on YouTube, there's the cover. That's a Lynda Barry original. So what you're getting, Cruddy, is snippets, I guess you would sort of things like that. So basically whole page drawings every 10 pages or so. Yeah. Yeah, so it's in that way, it's a bit more like a Paddington book. I don't think many people would describe Cruddy as akin to a Paddington book, but in the terms of the layout of the art appears occasionally, and I think it's very much meant to be found art. These are pictures that Roberta herself has drawn as sort of part of her diary, essentially. But definitely not a graphic novel.
It's interesting because there's been a couple of books that I've been reading that have been termed graphic novels, and it has a similar setup where you have an image every 10 or 20 pages or so. So maybe the terminology around graphic novels is changing. But again, this was released back 30, 40 years ago, so it's quite an old book.
Yeah.
30 years ago. I wouldn't say 40 years ago.
Yeah, well, you're aging yourself, aren't you? I mean, let's not worry about that. Yeah,
Let's
look,
move
I think
on.
the thing about graphic novels, though, the term graphic novel is a really important one. I think comic book readers will agree with this. When you say I'm reading graphic novels, you're not saying I'm reading comic books. And I feel like this is something, it's something that really
Oh,
matters to comic book readers. They want to be able to say they're reading graphic novels. They don't want that taken away from them.
I never
I
made that
think, I
distinction
think
before.
this is a novel with pictures in it, not a graphic. Yeah.
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 Apologies, everyone.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna stand up for my comic book reading brethren. We get picked on enough. So yeah. So how would you describe this book, given that the synopsis perhaps doesn't do it justice? What would you say, Shannon?
I have to agree with the term incredibly visceral. You can't get away from that word when you're reading this book. There's a scene where someone has died in a trailer and they've been rotting away, and she talks about the family of flies that have been living and growing. And she does a great job of drawing you away from the disgust and horror of a dead body. And she's now talking about the flies, but in the back of your mind, you know it's there. And she does a great job of kind of patching over all these awful scenes and situations that occur to our main character throughout the book. I just want to say the book starts off with Roberta writing in her diary saying, "This is the end. If you found my book, I'm dead." And it's a child writing it. And I don't know if you've got similar stories where you would start off being melodramatic in your personal diary and you obviously are still here, I'm still here. So that's how you start your journey in this novel. Oh, this is just a child being a child. And then you get to the end.
Yeah. I feel I should just quickly jump in and say there will be spoilers here in this review.
Yes.
This is a spoilered review. So yeah, you might need to
I think
see if you can
everyone
drag
should
that
be.
maybe that could be our front piece for the episode.
Yeah. I will do that.
Yeah, well, here's a question for you, Shannon. Did she kill herself? Because she says she's going to, and certainly in reviews I've read, the takeaway is that she did. I'm not convinced. There's nothing in the book that says to me she definitely did kill herself. What do you think?
It's a very good question. There are definitely hints throughout the book. She's planned it pretty much on how she's going to do it. So there's a scene where she talks about how much she loves trains. And you're like, yep, it's going to be a train. She goes out. She's off to head to the train tracks. That's the last passage of it. But there's another character that dies and he drowns in, I'm not sure if canal's the right word, but rushing water. And she makes this sentence and she says, "He's gone wherever people like us go." And I think this is what's so powerful about it, because whether or not she has killed herself is irrelevant because they're just so hidden that no one cares about these types of people. Does it matter if she dies? Does it not matter if she dies? I do think she does. Yeah.
I remain unsure. I mean, I suppose she comes to life in the book, and if you reread the book, she's back to life anyway. Although I suppose we're moving into a slightly different space there. But yeah, I remain kind of at the point where she's going to kill herself. I can't land on her not doing it or her doing it. But I think you make a really good point about the poverty. Another writer who does this really well, I think, is Donald Ray Pollock, who wrote Knock 'em Stiff. And in that book, you get the most profound sense that there is no getting out. Like, even if you go on a road trip, go somewhere else, assuming you can get out of town, you'll still be there. And I think that's one thing about Cruddy I do recall very strongly, is that the setting, there is no version of reality where Roberta exits that setting, even though she does, in fact, exit that setting. It's sort of still there. It's the Hotel California. You check in, you can't check out. I think, I don't think you can check out. Like, I mean, you can obviously my goodness, should we have sensitivity warnings on this review as well now that we're talking about suicide?
I think so, because I was about to also talk about sexual violence as well.
Yeah, that's all in this book.
Everyone. Yeah,
that's all in this book here, which you might pick up and go, this would be a good read for my 6-year-old.
You have to be prepared, but it's all under the surface. It's never explicitly said, but you pick it up and it stays with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the violence is very much out in front. But yeah, certainly, I guess the bits of violence that might have other disturbing aspects of them are sort of subtextual. But you really get a strong sense of it. Her relationship with her father, I think, is a very strange relationship. And I think there is a sort of a weirdly repressed sexual undertone to it, which is all very strange, in fact, because the father also makes her a boy, doesn't he?
Yes. And he calls her Clyde. As they're going out on their adventure. And to kind of highlight their strange relationship, she starts off saying how she doesn't like being touched. And if she gets touched, she bites. Like, yep, okay, that's reasonable. And then there's a scene where her dad kind of hugs her and grabs her and she bites him. And then he starts swearing his head off, throws her to the ground, starts kicking her. And she's imagining something else. And he's like, why did you do that, Clyde? Rah! And she says, it's because you called me little girl when he hugged me. It's like, I wasn't going to get anything from you, but it's because you called me little girl when you hugged me. And nothing's being said, but you pick up on it instantly when you're reading. You're like, oh, God, there's a lot of, yeah.
Yeah, and he does sort of say, I wasn't going to do anything, which, you generally, when it's understood, you don't need to say these things. So yeah, but it's handled very well. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, the idea, and it's cliche because it's true, of some men being disappointed in having daughters and essentially wanting sons. But this is a different take on that. It's a very refreshed take on it, I think, and it gives you a lot of food for thought.
At one stage, you said that it reminds you of The Postman Always Rings Twice.
Yes. Yeah. Not so much. I don't know that the book per se reminds me of The Postman Always Rings Twice so much as the character of the father reminds me of The Postman Always Rings Twice. I'm just having a quick look through my notes to find his name. I think it's Frank Chambers. It is Frank Chambers. Yeah, so in James M. Cain's The Postman Always Rings Twice, there's a character called Frank Chambers, and spoilers, he enters into a relationship with a woman and ends up conspiring with her to kill her husband. And that's all done in a very kind of cruddy way, I suppose. It's a very visceral scene when they kill the husband. It's quite unsettling, and there's quite a lot of almost comic miscalculation tied up in it. These guys are not master criminals. But there is a scene where after they've killed him, the husband, who I think his name was Nick, but Frank calls him the Greek, which again, I echoes of Cruddy in that characters sort of have those kinds of names, like the Turtle. But there was a scene where, so Nick, the Greek, is being lowered into the ground, having been murdered by Frank, and what's her name? What's her name, Shannon? Cora. Frank and Cora. And he says, I got to blubbering while they were letting him down. That's into the grave. I got to blubbering while they were letting him down. Singing those hymns will do it to you every time, and especially when it's about a guy you like, as well as I liked the Greek. Which is a very disturbing idea, like that he actually felt a genuine affection towards this guy he murdered. And I think that Roberta's father is very much that way. There was a scene in the book which I remember it, but I don't remember it, which is always a problem. The father's so cheerful in the way he commits murders. And I do recall a scene in Cruddy, and perhaps our listeners will be able to actually ferret this out and put it in the comments. But he basically sort of says a similar thing, like, too bad I had to kill this person. They're a swell guy. And you recall it too, right? And you actually went looking for it for me because I couldn't find it and you couldn't find it either. So
No, I typed in like in my search and I checked every paragraph that had the word like in it and I still couldn't find it. But the sentiment at least is there, whether or not we've got the right terminology or the dialogue that he uses when he's describing it. But he kills his sister, his half-brother, his wife, his cousins, the lady that he was hooking up with before he left Roberta's mum. Everyone that is around his vicinity dies. So how does Roberta get out?
Well, yeah, she's a survivor, isn't she? Yeah. So, I mean, that was one thing. I find I have a very intertextual brain, and what I recall of Cruddy is the way it feels like it's speaking to other texts. I have one other quote, because I think this one, I think if there is an influence, and the thing about influence is you could ask Lynda Barry and she could say, well, I've never read this book, and that probably be true. But influence is funny in the way it sort of can come around through different channels. But I was very much reminded of The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger when I read Cruddy, which The Catcher in the Rye is certainly considered one of the greatest American novels of the 20th century. So that's a kind of an endorsement, isn't it? But I just wanted to read you this is quite early on in The Catcher in the Rye, but I hear Roberta's voice in this, and see what you think. So this is Holden Caulfield, the main character. He says, if you really want to hear about it, the first thing you'll probably want to know is where I was born and what my lousy childhood was like. Could have said Cruddy. And how my parents were occupied and all before they had me, and all that David Copperfield kind of crap. But I don't feel like going into it if you want to know the truth. In the first place, that stuff bores me. And in the second place, my parents would have about 2 hemorrhages apiece if I told anything pretty personal about them. Besides, I'm not going to tell you my whole goddamn autobiography or anything. I'll just tell you about this madman stuff that happened to me around last Christmas, just before I got pretty run down and had to come out here and take it easy. I mean, that's all I told DB about, and he's my brother and all. Now he's out in Hollywood, DB, being a prostitute. If there's one thing I hate, it's the movies. Don't even mention them to me. So I hear Roberta in that quite a bit. Although I have to say that when I went looking for a parallel passage to sort of give our listeners a sense of how similar they are, I couldn't land on one. This is the problem of Cruddy. I have these ideas, and yet I can't find them in the text. It's infuriating.
When I was reading it this morning, I noticed something. You remember the character, the Great Wesley, the stick, the turtle. All these people who have these names die in the end. And I've quickly gone back to her departing letter to check, because I had a theory, if she did not put her name down as Roberta and then something else, she also died. So she signs off as the author. So maybe she did die. But do you know other books? And I feel like this is a technique where you're removing their humanity by giving them another name or not calling them by their name.
Yeah, she's the author, isn't she? So the author definitely dies at the end of the book. I just wonder if Roberta dies. And I think she remains in stasis in my mind anyway, because there is a life beyond the book. And writing the book, shelves that bit of her life. So, I mean, I could just as easily see her getting to the train tracks and getting ready to jump in front of the train and then just deciding to walk to the next town and something else will happen. But certainly the life that she lives that's described in Cruddy, I think it comes to the end at the end of the book.
Yeah.
And I think that might be...
I was going to say, do you remember when the Great Wesley dies?
That is in the canal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I remember the Great Wesley wears a dressing gown, doesn't he? A robe.
Yeah, which is kind of described like a Kingsley robe. And the turtle and the Great Wesley have escaped from a psychiatric ward or something similar. And when you get to know these characters, it creates a blanket of such bleakness and despair. And I just want to read this passage of his death because I think it encapsulates the book. But the sound of the splash behind me changed everything. Wesley went over the canal edge, hit the rushing water, and was carried away so fast. I jumped up running alongside the canal, and it seemed like he was waving to me, shouting some encouraging words to me, but I couldn't hear what they were because the turtle was screaming, "Wait for me, my dear, dear Wesley, wait, wait." And he ran so fast, chasing after the shape of the disappearing Wesley, but he was not fast enough. I saw him slip out of his shoes and jump in. The cop hopped back in his car and took off. I was sure he was going for help, but no one ever came. In a certain way, it didn't surprise me. I know about cops, about fathers, about the world. There is part of me hoping that maybe they made it wherever people like us finally go.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's really ambiguous, isn't it? They made it to wherever we go. One would imagine, I mean, you could read that as they made it to some better afterlife, and that isn't necessarily one in which you have to die first. And that's why I think her death is not as straightforward as a lot of the other reviewers have seemed to infer. I think it is open, and I think I don't think that's wishful thinking on my part. I think that's very much the nature of this book. You could fall in either direction, but would it matter?
So the book is first person narrated. Do you think you could get the same effect of what we feel after we finished reading if it was in third person?
Okay, so if it was in third person, it would be something a bit like Sherlock Holmes, in that it would be someone chronicling somebody else's life. Because the nature of it being a chronicle is really important, and I think the artwork is very much tied into that. You know, there is the illusion that this is a found document, which is really important to the piece. So if it was in third person, it would have to be done kind of that way, I think. Would that affect it? Yeah, kind of, actually, because I think she's the author, right? I don't think she may refer to herself as the author at the beginning of the book as well, but it certainly doesn't come up a lot to my memory, which of course is
just the start and the end, I think.
Yeah, so the author goes off to die. The author's story ends. That much is certain. But I think there is a distinction between Roberta as character and Roberta as author, which is actually true in all books. But I think it's highlighted in this book. Yeah, I mean, you could read it as a suicide note to cover the fact that she's disappearing. And so obviously the nature of her writing it, of including these pictures, this whole sense that it's a bit like, what's that horror movie that is now about 30 years old? The Blair Witch Project. The idea, the sort of the found footage genre, I think this falls into that.
Yeah.
I guess it falls into, it's a sort of a grotesque. I think that's one word you could apply to Cruddy. It's a sort of a grotesque sort of book, or even almost carnivalesque in the sense that characters wear masks. The turtle, the stick. They're all kind of, there's a sort of a carnivalesque quality to it. And when I say carnivalesque, I'm sort of talking about the tradition in medieval literature, which may be going too far afield now that I think about it. So let's wind away from that. Do you have any more passages you want to share? Because I feel like I could hear another one if you've got another one under your hat or up your sleeve.
I don't, because I lost my bookmark page. Keep talking. I'll try and find it.
I'll throw one out. This is chapter 1. In fact, I was going to say it's the beginning of chapter 1, but it's the entirety of chapter 1. For our YouTubers, that's this passage here. So some quite short chapters. They're not all as short, though. Some of them are a fair bit longer. Anyway, just to give you a sense of how the writing sounds, or a bit more of a sense. When we first moved here, the mother took the blue mirror cross that hung over her bed in our old house and nailed a nail for it in the new bedroom of me and my sister. Truthfully, it is a cross I have never liked. The Jesus of it seems haunted. He's the light absorber kind. In the pitch black middle of the night, he will start to glow green at you with his arms up like he's doing a tragic ballet. Some nights looking at him scares me so bad I can hardly move and I start doing a prayer for protection. But when the thing that is scaring you is already Jesus, who are you supposed to pray to?
Oh, that's really powerful.
Yeah.
I just had another thought. So the structure of the book, we start off with a letter from Roberta explaining the end at the start, that she's going to kill herself. And then you enter into the book, and it goes between the 5 years of her past when she goes on this adventure with her dad and her now, her present. And each chapter goes past, present, past, present, past, present. Do you think it could have been done or structured in any other way beyond that to get the effect that we do at the end?
Not to get the effect we do at the end. I mean, obviously, yeah, you could totally structure it in a different way, but they call this, I think they call this boomerang storytelling these days. I believe
there's a terminology for it. Okay.
The Walking Dead was criticized for overdoing it. I don't think it's a very good term, to be honest, boomerang storytelling. I don't think it's quite right. I would say it's more like a hall of mirrors. And as you look from one side to the other, it reflects something different behind you. And so I would suggest that it's much more like she's walking down a hallway of mirrors, looking to the left, to the past, looking back to the present. And they very much reflect each other in interesting ways. You know, you learn she's lost a finger, then you learn why she lost the finger. And her understanding of all of that now also shapes how you see what happened then as we return to it. And so, I would call that more of a hall of mirrors effect, like you would find at a carnival, weirdly enough. But yeah. Now, you know what? I'm just going back to carnivalesque. I think this has a very sort of carnivalesque quality. And although a lot of that kind of writing is described, in sort of the postmodern novel as impenetrable, I don't think it has to be. I think this is very much a carnivalesque book. Yeah, it's funny. It's also disturbing. And what makes it disturbing is that it's funny. And what makes it funny to an extent is that it's disturbing. And that's very much how that kind of carnivalesque tradition works. It's a mixture of the two extremes.
I do have to apologize because I completely forgot the humor element within this book.
It's a very funny book.
It is very funny, but it's not the aftertaste. Like if I was trying a new dish, it's not the aftertaste that you get, but it's the initial taste on the tip of your tongue as you're going into this book. Very funny. I remember reading it, was some scenes you just crack out laughing, but then you get hit straight afterwards with something quite dramatic. You're like, oh, you get that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you watch someone reading Cruddy, they may retch at a certain point, and that retch could turn into a laugh, or they could be laughing and then start retching. I think it's, or then stare thoughtfully into the corner at the horrible green Jesus on their wall. It's very much that kind of thing, and that's what makes it disturbing, though. I mean, it's not serious, I guess, in the way that, you know, the very solemn can actually leave you outside of what is dramatic or unsettling in a piece. Solemnity, like going back to the Postman Always Rings Twice. What disturbs me about that scene is that he feels affection for the person he murdered. The whole scene is really unsettling, but also really funny, because he's worried that the other people in the church don't like him that much, and they don't know he killed their friend. And so there's a sort of
that is funny. But back to the book, I think this book is really effective in the message that you get when you're reading it, because there's no overt messaging about it. It's just, this is what it is. It's not good, it's not bad, this just is. And I wish more authors did this. And it's funny because I got a call from my sister, and she's read a book recently, and she hated it. The synopsis was good, the blurb was good, the first chapter was good, but as she delved into it, it was just, and it was very obvious, just the author imposing their opinions and ideas, and it was coming so very strongly and thickly through the writing. This doesn't do that at all, which is what I really appreciate about it.
Yeah, I think it was Flannery O'Connor, who said, you know, a fiction writer's job is to render mysteries, not solve them. And didactic writing in the fictional space is pretty much always on the nose, I think. I would think that, if Lynda Barry was asked, and certainly I did read a lot of interviews with her for this podcast. I've forgotten them all, but I'm pretty sure she would not say, yeah, I wanted you to take a particular message from Cruddy. I wanted you to see the world this way once you'd read it. I think, as a general rule, good fiction aims simply to give you an experience you're going to remember. And you may indeed draw some conclusions, moral and otherwise, from that. But I think most good fiction writers are not preoccupied with giving you a message. The soapbox cracks.
I've been swimming in my appreciation of this book. How many stars would you give this book?
That's an interesting question because, as I said up front, my memory of it is compromised. But I think did we read it in September last year? It's been a long time.
It's been a long time, and we got a interview that we had to push forward. It's been a while.
Yeah.
And no one would fault your memory because it has been a while, Gareth.
I mean, I would have struggled a month later, but obviously. And I find, like, I reread passages of it, but really that doesn't do the thing justice. I think you have to kind of pretty much reread it, and I'm too time poor at the moment. So I can't give it 5, and I think the main reason I wouldn't give it 5 is and I was saying this to Jay because I had a chat with Jay after I read it. It's definitely a very good book, and I would definitely recommend people read it. For me, I found it quite unsettling, and I think it was my headspace at the time. But I think, you want to be – I don't want to rewrite history on this thing. So if I read it now, I might well land on 5 with you. But I think I would give it 4. I think it's very effective in making you unsettled, but I found myself so unsettled but I wouldn't say it's an experience. It was an absolute want to do it again kind of thing. So I think I'll land on 4.
You only want to go on the roller coaster once. And
out of respect for my past self, who I think would have given it 4. Yeah.
And should I start the drum roll again, because you are about to announce our next book review that we're going to be doing? The title?
Yes. In amongst all my notes.
Sorry,
drum roll.
I started too early.
No. Go for it.
Ooh.
Okay. So it is this book, A Happy Death by Albert Camus. And I think we've talked about this before, but A Happy Death was the first go-round that Camus had in writing a book that would ultimately become The Stranger, or The Outsider, as it is titled here. So what I was hoping we would do is we're going to review A Happy Death, which is the book he wrote and then went, no, this isn't right, I'm going to rewrite it from scratch, which got him to this one. But there's also an essay of Camus' called The Myth of Sisyphus. In the book, the collected essay is called The Myth of Sisyphus, which is quite helpful, I think, in understanding what he was trying for in The Outsider. And that may give us some clue as to why he thinks he didn't achieve it in A Happy Death. So that's what we'll be doing. And then also next time we catch up, we're talking about maybe having a general chat about this idea of writers who get to a certain place in a book and chuck it out altogether, or rewrite it from scratch, or somehow find a way to finish it. But just that idea of the sort of the creative crisis that occurs with some books.
And there are a couple of podcasts that we have referred to, The Stranger by Albert Camus. I highly recommend checking out those. I think we did a translation on it at some stage, because there's a French word called mama.
Yeah, that was right. The choice of how to say my mother has baffled translators for years. I notice in podcasts on YouTube, they say, and you'll be able to see it in this video, and they point. And almost always nothing appears. So I'm just going to say you'll be able to find it on that video there.
You'll be able to find it on our channel.
Somewhere on our channel.
YouTube at The Pleasure of the Text, as well as on Spotify or whatever listening platform that you are on. And I actually am stealing this from another YouTube channel that I listened to recently. Please like and subscribe, everyone. We're not that far away from YouTube being able to support us, being able to make more videos. Hence, there would be less time between videos, which would be amazing on our front. So please click the free like and subscribe button and share with your friends. And go out, get your book for The Happy Death and The Outsider, or The Stranger. It is The Stranger, isn't it? And we'll see everyone next week. Well, not next week. Oh, my God. No, we'll see everyone next time.
Next time.
The Pleasure of the Text.
See you, folks.